What's up, everybody? We want to welcome everybody back to the main point. It's me again, Kodak Ray, and your boy Jermond Wiggins.
Here I am.
Jermond, what's up, man? What we talking about this week?
Well, this week, man, coming off of the Battle of Atlanta was a awesome event. I mean, it was spectacular fights all over the place, forms. It was a lot. It was a lot of people who attended this year. What did you think of the battle, Kodak?
Man, this was actually one of the best battles that I've ever attended. I mean, I've been to some great Battle of Atlantas, but this one was totally different from the Friday night finals.
Oh man,
You
spectacular.
know what I mean? To just a whole different lot. They were to a live DJ on stage.
Yes, that was a
It was
nice little
live.
piece added to that. Shouts out to Ernest Miller for putting together a successful Friday night fights. Me and your man right here, Kodak Ray, we were
Shout
participating.
out Uncle E.
So, definitely the Battle of Atlanta brought a lot of fighters from all over the country. Of course, we knew they were coming from the West, the East, the South, the North. And, I mean, it was really a star-studded A-plus event.
It had people from Europe.
Let's not
Austria,
forget, yeah.
Hungary,
Yes,
South Africa.
South Africa too, exactly.
The battle, y'all did your thing this year.
Definitely, I give you guys, snaps for that. Good job, for putting together a good event for us tournament fighters. But moving into the event, one of the things that, I seen and I brought to my co-host's attention was, you can't really control, what judges see. However, there are, good judges, as I like to describe in this scenario, good centers, bad corners. Now, those corner judges and those centers, are really, based off experience. The corner judges might not be as experienced as, the center judge. Usually you put somebody who has control, who people know they're comfortable with, because it can get intense in a tournament fight. Would you agree, Kodak?
Yeah, well, in order to be a center, you definitely have to be able to take control of the ring. As a center referee, your number one job is to secure the safety of the fighter and to make sure that all points are getting called accordingly, and to make sure that your other judges, whether it's 2 or 4, are in sync with you. You know what I mean?
Agreed. And it's not to throw anybody under the bus, because to be honest, without the judges, we wouldn't be able to
We
fight.
throwing y'all under the bus.
Well, let's be very detailed and descriptive. What we might see at some events is, a great center referee who's calling points, but the other corners, they're usually local guys. In some instances, they're local people, volunteers. So they're trying to do their best job with the yelling, the noise, and the excitement. It can become critical in some of those situations to call the right point and call what you see the right way. So, there's influence outside of the ring, which we're going to talk about some things that actually that help control that. So, with a good center, a bad corner, you might get a great center judge, for example, let's call it Bob Liker, and you get 2 guys from, who knows where. They're just trying to go there and, judge and do their job. My question is, are they actually attending the rule meetings, and are they demonstrating, what are points, what are not points? Because usually you go to a tournament, they have the black belts meeting, they tell you, okay, 1 foot out of bounds is no point. And what I seen was kind of inconsistent was people scoring out of bounds. And the corner judges, and this is where I kind of, say it's a bad corner, they should be looking and monitor that line and say, okay, is this fighter in or out?
Especially if they're in the corner and someone's going out of bounds in their corner.
In their corner.
Like, dude, I remember it's a coach, Mike Conroy. He always says something. He's like, dude, he's out of bounds. And you'll look and you'll see the person isn't necessarily out of bounds, but you have to look closely. Mike usually says, what he does say actually is, if one person, you can have 1 foot out of bounds, and when you lift the foot that's in bounds up, that makes you out of bounds, because now your base leg is out of bounds. So for some people it's a little objective, because they feel like you have to have 2 feet totally out of bounds to be out of bounds. But if you are 2 feet out of bounds, that's a whole different story. So you have to look at it and you have to examine it on a case by case basis. Also, a good center and bad corner type position was, I witnessed the ring. Now, it was a judge. He was a decent judge. He's more of a forms competitor, and he judges sometimes sparring. His name was Drew Derek Bisbee. He's out of Florida. Now, he was judging one of the lighter rings. I believe it was like super light and lightweight. I seen one fight when it was one of the next level guys, James Poor, and he was fighting against Justin Ortiz from Paul Mitchell. Now, mind you, the fight was going It was an excellent fight. The fight was full of energy, and both of the fighters are little fast fighters. So and they're both very
That's
cautious.
true. That happens.
So they're very cautious. It was a play in the fight where Justin threw a back leg round kick, and James blocked it like this. Now the two corner judges were behind Derek, and James' stomach was in front of Derek, and they both called 2 points going off of the sound.
But it brings me to my next point.
Wait, but now I'm not. Justin did wind up winning the match, and I'm not going to say that point did or did not make the fight. But
right.
it's just that you want to have judges make a call on something they saw rather than something they heard.
Well, one of the issues is, Kodaq, and you bring up a good point about the sound, and I've always said this: does blocking get credit? I mean, clearly it gives credit to the other side.
Feels the same as, you know what I'm saying? Like,
well, that's the whole thing about judging in the corners. You have to move. Judges in the corner tend to stay stationary, and I have witnessed a lot of times where they're calling points like you said on the backside, but you can't see it. It should be no call. If you cannot see without doubt that point scored, it should be no call. You're going to get good calls and bad calls throughout the whole day. We get that, but our job is to try to get more. I'm sorry, judges' job is to try to get more calls right than wrong.
Yeah, their job is to get the percentage, at least 85 to 87% of the calls right. We'll give you the 13% that you're not going to get right, because at the end of the day, it's subjective. It's what you think scores, but it should be what you see that you think scores, not what you think that you heard scored. And this is in no way a shot at Justin or at James or whatnot. This is just talking about the way that the judges, that they're judging these fights based on sound and different criteria that's not actually judging criteria.
Right, exactly. When you're going out to these tournaments and your sponsor or you individually wise, you're spending your hard-earned money. You want a good quality refereed ring. In some cases, we don't always get that. Our ability has to rise above the actual judging. However, it still should be quality judging. If you're calling yourself a top national event, you want the best judges in place. We do appreciate their volunteer work. We're just asking that, hey, move around a little bit. It's never a time when you go to a professional sporting event where the referee on one end of the court is just waiting until they come back down. No, move around. It's a big ring. Move around so you can see the points. Whenever I'm judging, I try to encourage, especially new people who are kind of, getting familiar with calling points, because some people, they get nervous. Like, I don't want to make the wrong call. What do I do if they're doing this? I say, don't call it. If it's not a technique, don't call it. This was an event that happened a while ago, but I digress. My point is to move around a little bit more if you're a corner judge. The center judge, they usually are able to see everything because they're in the middle of the fight. But the corner judges, you got to move around. You got to look at the fighter to find out if they're out of bounds. You should be saying out of bounds, notifying the
say stop, out of bounds. Because at the end of the day, when they go out of bounds, the fight should stop and be brought back into the middle.
Absolutely. So we're just trying to play by all the rules. So
center referees, get your corner judges in check, because at the end of the day, it's a representation of you and how you're running your ring. Okay, we're not here to complain. But we're here to just bring something so that you bring it to your attention so you guys can improve upon it. We're all here to make the sport better and make it better for all the competitors. And at the end of the day, if your corner judges aren't up to par, it's going to make it seem like your ring isn't up to par, and that's going to question your judging in particular. All right, guys, get it together.